Woo. Nice. All right, just adjusting my camera a little bit. All right, everyone. It's your girl, Gabrielle. Welcome to a brand new episode of Hot Topics. If you are unfamiliar with the show, let me tell you what the show is about. So this is the show where we like to talk real talk about things in education, mental health, social services, what else? Physical health, all that good stuff. So I am looking forward to today because I don't know what it is about this topic, but I keep finding myself talking about these things. But I am excited because not only do we have a repeat topic, we have a repeat guest. And this topic I am bringing back for the 14th time, you guys. That is a record-breaking, I don't even know the word for it, but that is a record-breaking accomplishment here on Hot Topics. We have brought back this very topic for the 14th time. And let me tell you what that topic is, you guys. That topic for the 14th time is living with a disability, you guys. So I have I don't know how this came to be. I have a whole sub-series about living with a disability. And they keep finding me, you guys. And I keep putting it out there. But that's what we're all about at Hot Topics, especially being a part of a Step Ahead Tutoring Services. We want to have this discussion about what else, disabilities. And today's disability, I believe we're bringing this particular disability back, I want to say for the 12th time. This particular disability in question is I didn't do my little banner, but that's okay. It is Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder, which is commonly known as ADHD. So I believe this is the 12th time that we're talking about ADHD, and this is the 14th time that we're bringing this particular general topic. And let me tell you, this is crazy. This is crazy. I don't know how this keeps happening. But yet again, we're here to talk about ADHD, you guys. And I have a guest with me who is actually returning to the hot seat, and he is going to tell us his story. So when I found out that he has ADHD, I was like, dude, I got to get you on. So without further ado, let me tell you who the returning guest is. My returning guest is Dalton Jensen, and I'm going to tell you about him. So let's get right into it. Who is Dalton Jensen? Let me tell you who he is. Or rather, let me remind you about who he is. So Dalton Jensen is a sales leader, author, and founder of Aloha Views. Aloha Views is a consulting firm that specializes in business acquisition. Dalton is an MBA candidate with over 10 years of experience in sales, finance, and accounting. He is the author of Sales Genius and the Thinking Project podcast host. His mission is to help individuals break into the world of entrepreneurship. By learning sales and starting a business, anyone can earn more freedom in their lives. He currently resides in Utah with his family. You can learn more about his projects on daltonkjensen.com, which we'll reference later. And I think that's it. Just wanted to make sure we got his bio. All right, so I'm going to bring him to the stage right now. Hi, Dalton. How are you doing today?
How are you, Gabrielle? That was awesome. Thank you so much. I'm really grateful to be here. This is a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you for coming on this momentous occasion. This is the 14th time we're talking about living with a disability, and I believe this is the 12th out of those 14 times. I want to say 12 of those times have been about ADHD. So, thank you for continuing my sub series, and carrying on the torch and the tradition. So just put that over here. All right, so we are here to tell your story, and I'm going to add you to the ADHD Hall of Fame. So, I want to hear your story. I want to hear how you found out, about your disorder and how you came to grips with it. And this is your life story. So I want you to tell your life story. So do you want me to just jump in with a question, or do you want to just get started?
Yeah, I can hop in.
So all right, ADHD, so let's do it.
Yeah, ADHD has been something that has always been a big part of my life. And, I found out later in life, although I'd had some suspicions. And funny enough, I'd always thought that like I had ADHD, and I grew up in a time when like ADHD didn't really exist, or like people didn't acknowledge it as much. They just thought you were being like a bad kid, right? And so, it took a while for me to actually, get diagnosed with ADHD. Because, as I realized later in life, I was like, something isn't right. And, I was still having a hard time. I was like 26. I've been in my professional career at that time for like 5 or 6 years, and was making a decent amount of money, and still couldn't sit through long meetings, important meetings that I had to be to. I had bosses going like, dude, you can't keep getting up out of this meeting. And so I was like, man, I got to figure something out. So, and it took me a while to get like actually tested and go through the formal process, because I remember someone telling me like, it's a lot harder to get diagnosed as an adult than it is as a kid. And I think a lot of that was around like the abuse of like the certain types of medicine that they put you on with ADHD. Not all of it, but some of the more robust ones, like Ritalin or Adderall or something like that. So somebody had told me that like it's harder to get diagnosed, and so I was like, man, that's wild. So anyway, but eventually did, and I was diagnosed with a combined ADHD. So combined is when I say that, I mean like impulsive, hyperactive, and inattentive, and distractible. So like I had the triple threat, right? Or at least that. But anyway, so then I got diagnosed with it, and it was kind of a crazy experience from there. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of the story of how like I got diagnosed. But I'd always known, like I always fidget, used to fidget, had a hard time remembering things, and then all the other symptoms of ADHD that kind of get, that people diagnose over ADHD, but it's actually like, from what I understand, is like a symptom. So like tinnitus in your ear, dyslexia. So I have that, quickly forget things, although you get really hyper focused and then start to remember things, so there have been, I've gathered some tools, some like hacks over my life to kind of combat that. But now I'm in therapy, and I do a lot of that, but and it helps out a ton with my business. ADHD is a blessing and a curse for my businesses that I run. But yeah, that's kind of the gist of it.
All right, thank you so much for for sharing your journey. So let's unpack this. So what made you decide to get diagnosed for this learning? Is it learning or developmental?
Yeah, I don't know what it's called, but for me, it made me what made me start to do it was so my family. So I grew up in a really kind of crazy family, but with like parents who were really prone to addiction. And so I knew that I could kind of see some of these like addictive habits coming up in my life, and I really didn't want that to happen. And so as I was like doing some research, like trying to dig in, one of the things that ADHD does is like causes impulsivity, right? So like you don't have a lot of control over like, so because I kept finding myself doing stuff, and then somebody would be like, well, why are you doing that? And I would just be like, I have no idea. I don't know. They're like, that's not good. And I'm like, absolutely, but I don't know why I did it. And that's a severe part of, and right, there's a spectrum of ADHD, right? And I'm more on the severe side with like impulsivity. So I'll just do stuff and then, and not really think about it. And so that's what made me like, I got to figure this out. And then that's when ADHD came up. My brother has ADHD. And so I was like, well, maybe it runs in our family. Sure enough, it did. I was diagnosed 3 different times by 3 different doctors. So.
Wow. Okay. So impulsivity is one. So the difficulty in sitting still and standing still, that's another one. I know in my previous conversations with my many guests, it tends to be very common in males in terms of being very hyperactive. And then in females, it's more in attention. So so tell me about the moment when you decided, you know what, I'm going to go to a doctor to get evaluated. Take us through that.
It was actually a therapist who did it for me. We had been talking a while. I'm a big proponent of therapy and mental health, especially if you're like a business owner and whatever you want to call that, right? If you call it mindset coaching or therapy or anything like that, like I prefer therapists, but if you have like a mindset coach or whatever. So I'm a big proponent of that. And it was actually my therapist who specialized in like relationships, ADHD, and like he worked with a lot of he works with a lot of like high income and high potential clients. So when I was working with him, he was like, yeah, he's like, because we used to joke about it. Like I used to joke about it, like, yeah, I got ADHD. But then I never really like took that seriously. And so when we were meeting, he was like, well, let's just do the test. And so we did the test. He's like, yeah, you got the combined. And I was like, all right, well, that's cool. Like, what do we do about it? And he couldn't really do any medication. So, and then life happened and I went and got a different and got a different therapist and I still talk to him he's a really good friend of mine. But I got a different one and I didn't tell them that I had been previously diagnosed with ADHD and they wanted to do it again. And so then they were like, well, let's just do the test and did the test again. And sure enough, came back again, like combined. So, it's like a blessing. But like, it's also a curse. Like I have to work a little harder than others. Like what comes easier for other people, it comes a little bit harder than me, but it's okay. Like, that's just, my philosophy is like partly is like, you can't change the cards you were dealt. So you just got to play the hand that you have.
Well, things are harder for you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
You said things are harder for you. Tell us more about that.
Yeah. So like like right now I'm the head of sales, along with my sales training mastermind. I'm also the head of sales full time for a big company called Dirty Dough. Mm-hmm. They're a cookie franchise company, and I head up their franchising sales. Mm-hmm. And so, for example, we have a lot of people coming through the pipe, and so so a lot of people can remember things easier. Like I can remember who I talked to on Tuesday, but for me, like I can't. And so, like if I don't write notes down, like I'm screwed. And so sometimes there'll be times when I don't write any notes down and somebody will call me and I got to have that, that embarrassing conversation. Like, hey, I know we talked, but I have ADHD and I totally forgot. And so you're going to have to remind me your name. And so sometimes, it gets a little crazy, but it's always like a good time because people are understanding, and those people who aren't, it's like not a big deal. Cause like, I understand some people just don't get it. Right. But like remembering things, getting disorganized very quickly. Like I have to have a structure and a process. Not to say that I don't adapt really easily, like in a startup, because like I work for a startup right now. But I got to make those. I got to make those processes work a lot better. Right.
So tell us about your processes. So when you say you're trying to make them better, what are you doing and what are you trying to do?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I have a 10-second journal, a 10-second journal. So whenever somebody asks me to do something or something comes into my head, like I need to do that, right? Like typically with ADHD, we just jump, like, it's like squirrel moment, right? Like we just jump. And people are like, you didn't finish this thing. So you have like a lot of unfinished things. So I have a 10-second journal that when something like that comes up in my head, I write it down. And there was a story about Napoleon Bonaparte, who would get a letter from like his army, from his generals. And when he would get the letter, he wouldn't open it for 2 weeks. Because usually, he said, if it wasn't that important, it would get resolved in 2 weeks. And if it was that important, when he opened the letter in 2 weeks, he would resolve it. And so that's kind of like me, right? Like I have my 10-second journal. I write everything down that comes into my head, but I stay on task. And then when I don't, then when I go back at the end of the day or the beginning of the day the next day, and I look at my 10-second journal from the previous day or from earlier that day, and I look at my list, I can start weeding things out like, oh, I didn't really need to do that, or I already actually did that, or like, things like that. So my 10-second list might go from like, 40 things down to like 5 things because I wait. So I write them down. I know that I'll get to it because I wrote it down. And there's a lot of like trusting yourself when you have that, right? So you got to like trust yourself a lot. Like I know that I would have written that down if it was important. And if it wasn't important and I didn't write it down, then, it really wasn't meant to be. And sometimes that's come back to bite me in the ass. But like generally it's a good rule.
I'll bite you in the ass how?
So like sometimes I'll be like, oh, I forgot to write that down. Must not have been important, and then actually was important. So I gotta have those awkward conversations, or I gotta like, work at like 10 o'clock at night. Like, oh shoot, I should have got that done. So.
Oh, okay, yeah. So you think it's important, but you thought it wasn't important, and then you realize, yeah, it actually wasn't important.
Right. And so for like from what I understand, I have a lot of friends who don't have ADHD, and for a lot of people, it's like they plan their day out, they time block, they got everything written, you know what I mean? And I can't time block. Like I lose my mind when if my calendar is full for no reason, I lose my mind. Like I can't do anything. So I try to keep it as empty as I can, so that I can work on the things that are most important. And that really helps me.
That really helps you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good.
You mentioned about medication. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. I mean, I take medication when I need it. ADHD medication kind of builds up in your system over time, so it like causes like the loss of appetite. So it gets pretty gnarly, So I don't take any of like the how do I say this politically correct, because I definitely don't want to like I don't take like Ritalin or I don't take any of the what?
I said go for it. It's hot topics.
Yeah. I don't take any of the gnarly ADHD medicine like Ritalin or anything like that. But that works for some people. Like I said, ADHD is a spectrum, and I'm like right past the halfway mark.
Mm-hmm.
So not all the way at the other end, but some of that. But then again, like you got to remember, like ADHD is medication is to help you get to a baseline.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't remove ADHD, right? Medication brings you to ADHD medication brings you to the baseline, and then you have to manage your ADHD. So this stuff helps you manage what you already have, and so that's something that's not really talked about either. It's like people think if you're just on the medication that you'll just be normal, right? And that's not the case, because you still have ADHD when you take the medicine. And so you're still going to run into the problems if you don't know how to manage it. So I kind of did it backwards. I learned how to manage it, and then I got medication to come to baseline.
Right, and you bring up a very important point. So when it comes to any kind of treatment, if should you decide to take medication, it should be a combination of medication and what's the word? Behavioral modification, right? Yeah. So it's not just a medication is only a temporary fix. It's not a permanent fix. It really is just to straighten you out, but there's still the behavioral training that comes with it. So you bring up a very important point, and I think that's something that we need to acknowledge.
Yeah, well, and it's like meditation too. So people kind of get mad at me. They're like, well, because I think everything should be on the table. I think if you need medicine, like medication, like absolutely, like modern health is a miracle. But I don't think we should take off the table, off the menu, like meditation or breathing exercises or things like that. But like I said, like again, like so I'm a big into like breathing exercises, like and breath work and meditation through breathing. But again, like breathing doesn't take away my ADHD. It helps me manage my ADHD. Like my ADHD will always be there. And
Yeah.
so coming to terms with that. So like it's you know I say that about medicine, but I also say that about meditation. Like meditation is not going to take away anything. It's just a way for you to it just brings you to a baseline where you need to like it brings you into your consciousness. It brings you into your intentional state, and then you gotta work from there, right? So I think that's just a lot of things. Like people will be like, oh, there's no magic pill. And then they'll want medication, and they'll be like, "That's still not a magic pill, though. You still got to work it."
Yeah, absolutely. So, what? I gotta get my thoughts together.
Yeah.
So, when you found out that it's on paper, signed and stamped by a doctor, by a therapist, that you have ADHD. Tell me the feelings that you were experiencing.
I was pretty indifferent because, like I said, I kind of knew about that for a while. I kind of knew that I had it. But the reason, and another reason that I had gone full bore with like getting a diagnosis was because there's a lot of symptoms of ADHD that we also like that I didn't know about, but that are also like surrounding it that also get mistaken for for example, like if you have ADHD, you probably have anxiety and depression, right?
Ooh.
That are I mean those are real, like and I am very empathetic about that, but what I'm saying is like those are not in and of themselves. They're also because of my ADHD. So like tinnitus, I don't know if you know what that is, but it's like a ringing in your ear that never goes away, or like that'll come and go away. Yeah, tonight. Yeah, and so that's a symptom of ADHD.
Really?
Yeah. So like there's a lot of like, ADHD is not just a mind thing. Like it's not just like, oh, he can't sit still. Like if someone has ADHD, they, like I said, they probably have anxiety. They probably have some depression. They probably have that tinnitus. They're probably dyslexic. And by the way, dyslexia and ADHD often get confused. And this is just from my research and from talking with the therapist and other medical professionals. So it's definitely fact check me. But this is just for what I've learned, So there's a lot more that goes into ADHD. ADHD is like the tip of the iceberg. So like you have to really learn how to like, so like, I go through like high anxiety moments, depressive moments like that. But when you know where it comes from, I think the thing for me is like ADHD helped me, and it answered more questions for me because I was like, oh, this makes sense. And once you know the answer and once you know what's going on, it's just like in business, right? Like if you know what the problem is and you know the cause and then you know how to fix it, right? Like in sales training, I always say the only objection that can kill a deal is the one you don't know about.
Mm-hmm.
And that goes the same. So the only thing that was really hurting me was not knowing about it. So I was grateful, and it was a good moment for me. It was a lot of clarity.
You mentioned about the anxiety and the depression,
Mm-hmm.
and I think I see the anxiety and depression as a result of the ADHD. I may be wrong with the like, there's like a primary diagnosis, and then there's like the secondary diagnoses.
Right.
So,
Right.
You have ADHD, and as a result of that, you have depression, you have anxiety. So, as opposed to like all three being isolated.
Yeah.
So at least that's my thinking about it. So you mentioned anxiety, you mentioned depression. So if you're comfortable, can you talk about those anxiety symptoms?
Yeah. I mean, like,
We'll break it down: anxiety and then depression. So
yeah. For me, so I'll just talk about me. I'm not a medical doctor or like a therapist.
yeah,
I'll tell you my
yeah.
I'll just tell you my story. So like, but yeah. And how I understand it is like, yeah, you can go ADHD. If you have ADHD, you probably have anxiety and depression, but it's not reverse, right? Like if you have depression, you might not have ADHD, right? So we'll start there. But like, But like, I don't know, anxiety and depression for me are something that I just usually happens like in the evening, like at night when everything's done. Like, because, you know, as ADHD, like I have a lot going on. Like if my day is full, intentionally full, not just like the fake full that I was talking about earlier. But if I'm doing a lot, it's all good. But I also like, my anxiety kind of presents itself in a way of like thinking that I'm not good enough. So if I make a mistake at work, like I take that super personally and it really affects me. And so I have to really learn, like I have to really step back and be like, okay, like this isn't me, right? Like this is just a moment. This is a breeze, you know, I just got to let it pass and then we'll go. Because most of the time the story that I tell myself is the world is ending. And the reality is like no one really noticed, or they're just like shocked that I even got it done. They don't even care about the mistakes, right? Like it'd be like if you were listening to Beethoven play the piano, right? He can hear the mistakes that he makes, but you can't, but you and I can't. You know what I'm saying? And so like Beethoven thinks it's a big deal, but we don't. We're just like, dang, dude, you can play that and I couldn't. And so that's kind of how I feel sometimes, not comparing myself to Beethoven or that I'm like the Beethoven of sales, but, you know, to illustrate the point of like, it's always a bigger deal in our head than it actually is in the reality. And so I always have to kind of like work on that.
So it's like you criticize yourself harder than who doesn't have ADHD.
Well, yeah, and you know, when you look at it, like, so that's a big one in the hustle culture. Like, you always, you know, entrepreneurs are always harder on themselves than anybody else. But but that's even a step further. Like I'm extremely hard on myself, even more than like the average person, because I can't get over it as quick if I'm in like a weird, you know, in a weird mindset. And so I always got to be really intentional about where my mind is at.
Mm. All right, so tell us your depressive symptoms.
Kind of same thing. So anxiety and depression kind of go hand in hand. Like typically, like again, in my case, when I was diagnosed with ADHD, I was also diagnosed with anxiety and depression. Like it wasn't two separate diagnoses; those were like the same. Which I've read commonly happen. Like usually somebody has depression and anxiety. And so like
we can. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think we can separate. We should kind of explain the two a little bit. So anxiety is more about like constant worry.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Like an extreme and a prolonged sadness.
Right. So
like hopelessness, dread. You know, that's more of the depression.
Yeah, so what I learned about depression and anxiety that made it click for me was like depression lives in the past and anxiety lives in the future.
Interesting.
Like depression is like, oh, dude, I should have done this, or man, I'm not good enough. Like, and all of those like I'm not good enough statements are past tense. Like because in reality, like you are good enough, like in the present, right? Like there's no external, like good enough isn't an external thing, it's an internal thing. And so and same with anxiety, like anxiety and depression are both also external, you know, like what other people think about me, although, you know, like I said, and by the way, let me just back up, I kind of misspoke. For me, depression and anxiety is always external. You know what I mean? Like I was writing in, like I had a journal prompt the other day on an app that I used to journal. And it was like, what would you tell your younger self? And I don't know if you saw this floating around on Facebook, but somebody, it was actually a really kind of like, it was a wild collage of photos. So somebody had posted their photoshopped pictures of actors, like really famous actors, of themselves today, and then right next to their younger selves. And they were like putting their hands on each other. It was actually a really beautiful collage. Like I got kind of worked up about it. It was really pretty to kind of see like how they interacted with their past self. And one of my journal prompts was that, like, what would your past self be proud of? And that kind of threw me into a long meditation on like, what if you could meet your younger self right now? Like knowing the things that I went through as a young kid and knowing all of that, right? Like, I don't know if you saw that movie, The Atom Project.
No, I
On
haven't.
Netflix.
No.
There was a scene in there that was like that, like meeting your younger self or meeting your mom at the time that she was raising you as a kid and how hard that must have been and the different perspectives. Anyway, this is just a wild thing. And so I don't know why I got on that tangent, probably my ADHD. But it's kind of wild just to think about how you interact with your younger self and how depression and anxiety for me was a lot of like external things because I have a lot of empathy for like my younger self. But yeah, those two things. So that was a truth for me. Was depression was living in the past and anxiety was living in the future. Like I was always so anxious about what somebody was gonna say to me or what was gonna happen, right? And what did Abraham Lincoln say? He said something like, "I've suffered many things in my life that I couldn't bear, and only a portion of them came to fruition." You know what I mean? And so, yeah, that was true for me.
It definitely it sounds like it's a lot for you, and it definitely sounds like something that constantly happens to you every day.
Yeah, I'm in therapy all the time. I'm in therapy weekly, but it's good. It's good for my businesses. But let me tell. But I'll just say this too, because like a lot of people think it's a weakness, and when you know where the holes are in the ship, it doesn't matter if there's holes. Like if you can plug them, you're fine. You know what I'm saying? Like your ship can have holes in it.
Mm-hmm.
That's not an issue. It's like, what do you do about it, right? Are you going to sink? Or are you going to plug them and get going, right? And so that's how I look at it. Like, is ADHD a hole in my ship? Maybe, but it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Because I can plug the hole. I know what's going on, and I just got to check on it. And if everything's fine, then I'm good to go. You know what I'm saying? I'm kosher.
I love that analogy. You know, it's just a hole in the ship, right? All you have to do is plug it in. So, and you know, and you can ride out the storm, right? So, however you choose to plug it in, right? Whether that is medication, whether that it's behavioral training, whether that meditation or whatever it is, it's you know, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah, because when I learned about that and I really started to figure out like, okay, this is my ADHD, I need to figure out how to manage this, right? I started making more money. I got better job offers. I got more people in my mastermind group. I was more focused because I knew where the holes were and I knew what I needed to do to get better. And maybe better isn't the right word, but like I knew what I needed to do differently to get to where I wanted to go. You know what I'm saying? Like once I knew that, like I was like, okay, that's why like this guy's plan isn't working for me because I need to tweak it, right? But whereas in the past I was like, dude, it's working for everybody. It's not working for me. I must be broken. Like I'm not broken. I just got to do things a little bit differently, and I can be exactly where they are.
All right. So one of the things that you talk about is, or you told me about, is that you hyper focus. Can you go into that?
Yeah. So like always have a new hobby, like always have the next hobby, right? Or always have like I just rebranded my podcast. And instead of like going on hiring like a VA or something, one day I was like, just like 5 hours, just like doing a bunch of rebranding for my podcast. And then I just, and then you look up and you're like, holy cow, it's 5 hours have passed. Like, how did you do that? They're like, I don't know. Well, like, yeah, no, I do know. Right? It's like a little ADHD thing. But yeah, just hyper focusing on like, just getting really fixated on one hobby or something like that. Like I was into golfing for a long time, and they just bounce around from hobby to hobby, but you get like super into it. You're like, no, like if I'm golfing, I need the best stuff. And then like a week later, you're like, I don't even know why I like golfing. I hate golfing. But you don't do that just with golfing. Like it's like golfing, guns were a really big hobby of mine. Like I loved to collect them and so I got really deep into that. Got really deep into like videography, and so it's just like it's not like, but it's those were like like 1 week, the next week, right? You just kind of go all in. Whereas somebody might go all in for like 6 months to a year, and that's fine. Like you figure out, you do something for a year, it's a pretty good timeline to see if you like it or not. But like not a week, right? Like you got to do something longer than a week. And so that was what it was for me.
Yeah, there's so much more I want to talk to you about. We didn't get into relationships. We didn't get into there's so much we didn't get into, but we got to start to wind things down, unfortunately. So, do you have any words of wisdom that you would like to share with our audience?
Yeah, I think it's just that. I think it's nothing. There's nothing wrong with a hole in a ship if you know it's there and you know how to manage it. And there's nothing wrong with the way that we are right now. And it's not better or worse. Like, I think if there was one word of wisdom I could leave about ADHD and business and just like entrepreneurship, it's that it's okay to be like, there's no need for labels in this world. Like, there's no good, there's no bad, there's no good, better, best. Like, just get it. You know what I mean? Just do you and figure out what works for you, and then work. You know what I mean? Because like, we figure out what works for us, and then we're like, well, that looks so much different than everybody else, and I think they're gonna think about whatever, and this is part of it, right? But like, don't worry about any of that. Like your ship will go no matter what. And just stop labeling things. I think that's it. I think that's the story of the Chinese farmer. And I'm sure you're familiar with that. I don't want to get too deep into that. But if you want to hear it, I'll tell it to you. You guys can just message me or email me.
Yeah, I think I'll let people just message you. I know there's so much we didn't cover. We didn't even talk. I know I said social relationships. We didn't even talk about how was school growing up. There's so much we didn't cover.
Yeah,
but
school even now. My MBA program.
Yeah. There's so much we didn't cover, but maybe next time, maybe we'll do a part.
Yes, ma'am.
Part 2. Maybe I'll bring you back. All right, so we're just going to jump ahead to the promo because I know you got to go. All right, so you guys, Dalton is all over the web, you guys. So you can learn about his services on his website. You can go to www.daltonkjensen.com. You can also check him out on his personal Facebook as well as his Facebook group called the Thinking Project Group. He is also on Twitter and YouTube. He does not like Instagram, you guys, so you will not find him on Instagram, but you will find him on everywhere else. YouTube, Twitter, he has a Facebook group, and he has a personal Facebook page, so definitely check him out. And you could go to his website, www.daltonkjensen.com. So please follow him on all of his accounts, join his Facebook group, and well, tell us about your services. I guess briefly about your services.
Easy. I have a selling mastermind that I host. You can find that on daltonkjensen.com. I also do a lot of podcast production. That's part of my podcast now for businesses. So if you ever want to get into podcasting or want to have any other questions, let me know. But other than that, yeah, super active on LinkedIn and YouTube and Twitter. So follow me there. I love it. Thank you so much, Gabrielle, for having me on.
I didn't even put your LinkedIn. So is it just your name?
Yeah. Yep. So what's cool about my name is it's very unique, and so that's everywhere. So you can find me on any social media at Dalton K. Jensen except for Instagram.
All right, so I'm just gonna.
But it's on TikTok, Dalton K. Jensen.
You're on TikTok too. Why didn't you tell me about it? So now you're on TikTok?
Oh yeah, but that was recent. That was before. That was after I sent you all that stuff. They put us on. Yeah, my team got me on TikTok, so I don't run it.
What's your TikTok name?
Dalton K. Jensen.
That's okay.
You can just if you type that into anywhere, you'll find me. That's how you find me.
Okay, all right. So this is just breaking news. He is on LinkedIn and TikTok. So it is just his name, Dalton K. Jensen. So follow him on all of his social media, you guys. And if you're looking for podcast production, if sales mastermind, go to his website, www.daltonkjensen.com. I want to make sure we get this in. You also have a podcast called The Thinking Project. Tell us about the podcast.
Yeah, the podcast is cool. Interview. You've been on there before. You know about that. It's really fun.
I've been a guest on your podcast. Yes.
Yeah, it's really fun. So go check out, the episode we did together because that was awesome. Business owners, creatives, had a lot of fun people on there. So yeah, check it out.
Yeah, so his podcast is called The Thinking Project. So check out his podcast right now. It is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever else there are podcasts. Check it out right now, you guys, and subscribe. Definitely subscribe. And I want to make sure we get this in. He has a sales mastermind group. You can sign up online at empatheticselling.com. Tell us about your group.
Yeah. That we meet twice a week or twice a month on Zoom calls. We have there's a private Discord channel for all of us to hop in and like share experiences and things like that. And and that's pretty much it. It's with the Discord and the weekly and the bi-monthly training. It's really good stuff. So we do a lot of good stuff there.
All right. So that is a mouthful, you guys. So check them out, www.daltonkjensen.com. Personal Facebook. He has a Facebook group called the Thinking Project Group. I'm just going to run through these again. He's on Twitter. He's on YouTube. I just found out he's on LinkedIn and TikTok. So definitely follow him on all of his accounts, you guys. And of course, if you're not able to catch all of this now, don't worry. All of this will be in the show notes, or it will be in the description of whatever platform you are taking this in, whether that is video or audio. All of this stuff is in the description. And for those of you watching on video, it is scrolling below at the bottom of your screen. So all of this stuff is at your fingertips, you guys. And once again, he has a podcast called The Thinking Project. It is available right now. Go check it out. I've been a guest. It was definitely awesome. So it is wherever there is a podcast. So Spotify, Apple, Google, iHeart, whatever it is, whatever you listen to, whatever your poison, definitely check it out. It is there. It's called The Thinking Project. Check out his podcast. And once again, he has a sales mastermind group. I encourage you to sign up. It is twice a month, he said, on Zoom. So if you want to take advantage of those services, the website to do that is www.empatheticselling.com. This information, of course, will be in the description and show notes. All right, so Dalton, I know you got to go. So thank you so much for joining me today. And thank you for coming back on Hot Topics.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for being here. I'll talk to you later.
All right. See you later. All right, you guys, it is now you and me. So let me get my banner up here, you guys. Okay, and we have reached the conclusion of our episode. Thank you so much for joining us today. So please check out our other episodes, and don't forget to follow and subscribe. So whether you are listening to me on audio or watching me on video, whatever platform that you are taking in my spirit right now, please follow and subscribe. And while you're at it, please let us know what you thought about this episode by leaving a comment in the comment section or in the comment thread. I, Gabrielle, would love to hear your feedback on this episode. And as a reminder, this podcast is a production of A Step Ahead Tutoring Services. So if you would like to learn more about our company, the services that we offer, maybe you're looking for a tutor. You're looking for a tutor right now for your child or even for yourself, because we also tutor adults. Please check us out. We are on the web. Go to our website, www.stepaheadtutoringservices.com, and we are also all over social media. Well, maybe not all over, but we're on a lot of social media platforms. You can find us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. We are on Instagram, WhatsApp. I'm forgetting a few others, and Eventbrite and Twitter. So we're on a lot of social media platforms. So please check us out on social media as well. And please follow us. And I'm just going to say our website one more time, www.astepaheadtutoringservices.com. I also want to encourage you to sign up for our Hot Topics text list, you guys. We just added this to our arsenal. We have a text list specifically for Hot Topics shows. So we encourage you to sign up for that list. All you have to do is text the code Hot Topics to 917-764-3975. I will repeat that again. Sign up for our text list that is specifically for Hot Topics podcast. Just text the code Hot Topics to 917-764-3975. You will learn about our upcoming episodes. You will learn about when they drop on audio, like Spotify or Apple. You will also hear about the live episodes that we do. You'll hear about our special discounts for our Hot Topics listeners and audience. So definitely stay in touch with that, and please join our text list. So I do have to say it is only for US and Canada only. I'm sorry, you guys. But for our international viewers, if you are outside of, if you are in any other country besides the US or Canada, please email us at success@astepaheadtutoringservices.com, or you can text us on WhatsApp, because we are on WhatsApp as well. Okay, I am going to share this final message with you before I officially close.
Hey there, have you heard of us? We're a small team of tutors here at A Step Ahead Tutoring Services. We believe that education and information should be accessible to everyone, regardless of income, race, or creed. We're dedicated to making this happen, but we need your help. Please consider making a donation to our company. No amount is too small. Your donation will allow us tutors to remain employed, offer free and low-cost services, put on productions like this podcast, and reach out to families nationwide. With your help, we can tackle the academic challenges of our students and the emotional, mental, and behavioral changes that result from these challenges. As a bonus, we can improve our communities in the process. Support us today. Send your donation by Cash App to $ASATS2013, by PayPal or Venmo to @ASATS2013, or by Zelle to success@astepaheadtutoringservices.com. For our Facebook Live viewers, you can also send us a star. Your support means a lot to us. Please note, we're a for-profit company. We're not a charity. Your donation may not be tax deductible. Please consult a tax professional.
And that is it for the show. Thank you so much for joining us. I look forward to you guys joining us on the next episode. Thank you guys so much for your support, and thank you for being with me on this very long journey. Whether you've been with us from the very beginning or you're just hopping on now, thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us. All right, you guys, that is it. And now I am signing off. Bye.